call this meeting of the budget workshop, the Horry County Solid Waste Authority to order. We'll start with an invocation and pledge of allegiance. While we're into the invocation, and Pam Creature will do the pledge of allegiance.
Let us pray. Oh, gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you so much for allowing us to be able to assemble together here this morning to take care of this business with the Solid Waste Authority, people of Overy County. I ask you, Lord, to put your loving arms around all our employees, all our board members. Please take care of them each and every day, Lord, to keep them safe. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're here to discuss the budget. Mr. Knight, you on?
Thank you, sir. This group here has been working on the budget way before Christmas. It takes a lot of work. I'm trying to say that the line item supervisors and lower down have been a key in understanding the budget, putting the budget together, and what accounts mean something, and everybody understands now. Maybe some of the public doesn't. A lot of the money that we've got designated funds for designated to ideas, and we just can't extend it. We've heard that for years, but once you get the hang of the budget and how to put it together, I think there's so much information in it. And it seems to all adds up. Which is a good thing. But I'll just turn it over to Jan and her group, and we'll get started.
Sounds good. Thank you, everybody. Good morning. Like I said, as Danny mentioned, we do have a balanced budget, which is great. I really have to thank staff because, like I said, they're the ones that work so hard to put everything together, take a look at everything, try to cut costs, save where we can, all those good things. As we've got here for you, we present a 2-year operating budget and a 5-year capital budget. With our operating budget covering, of course, all of our day-to-day expenses and our capital, those big capital projects, capital purchases, things along those lines. As Danny mentioned, our designated funds, those funds that we have set aside are what we use to fund our capital expenses, and we'll kind of go through those as we get into our capital budget. As I mentioned the other day at the board meeting, like I said, we wanted to kind of handle this budget workshop a little bit different this year. I think in years past, we've kind of each group has kind of gone through their budget line item by line item with highs and lows. This year, I said, that's a lot. I think that everybody's done such a good job to maintain their line items. There's not a lot of significant changes. I think it's more important that we spend the time going through our divisions, talking a little bit with you about the changes, any projects that we have, anything new that we have coming, if there's been any personnel changes, things along those lines. I think that's more important. If there is a line item that you've seen or anything questionable in this budget, feel free to ask us. Stop us anytime along this process and just ask any questions that you have. Like I said, I didn't even mention that, of course, we appreciate Mr. Spivey being with us this morning, as well as Shannon Todd from the county. Like I said, they're going to be a big help to us going forward on a lot of things, and we work very well with them. I appreciate Boaz being here as well. And then, of course, Amelia just joined us. Thank you. So, like I said, if you have any questions, don't forget Reggie. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about Reggie back over there in the corner. We've got Reggie Generette from the city of Conway. I did invite all of the municipalities to join us this morning. And so we really appreciate Reggie being here as well. Because like I said, as we go through this, our budget definitely impacts all the municipalities and the things that we do. So I'm going to kind of get it started. Like I said, we're going to start talking about, of course, the operating budget and the expenses side of things. Like I said, one of our biggest expenses, per usual, is personnel costs. Absolutely, every year we budget for an increase in health insurance that we anticipate each year, increase in workers' comp each year. So you'll see that along with everybody's budget. So I kind of just mentioned that general discussion. Of course, we have, in this year's budget, we do have a 4% cost of living increase budgeted and a 3% merit increase. So that we've got those. Like I said, some of the other things that we have, like I said, is just, like I said, our normal, we have our regular retirement, no increase in retirement this year, so like I said, we were fortunate there. So I'm gonna kind of get started on the administrative and finance departments. Well, my division covers the board of directors, administration, and finance. In our board of directors area, the only change that we are anticipating this year is we are going to change the board compensation to be in line with what the county just recently implemented for their boards and commissions. So that is a change that we are going to implement this year for our board compensation. As far as the administration department and finance department, not a lot of significant changes or anything there, other than, like I said, our personnel costs, of course. As far as the finance department, one of the projects that we're kind of looking at, that I've reached out to Angie Jones in the treasurer's office about, we continue to see increased costs with credit card fees. So one of the things that we're taking a look at in the finance department is using a credit card processing company to help capture those credit card fees. We do get several cash customers still at our Scales House. We get a lot of online payments, things like that for a lot of our customers, and that seems to be growing, which is great because, like I said, a lot less paper back and forth, which is wonderful. And so that is something that we are looking at implementing in this next year. Like I said, and I did reach out with Angie Jones, as the treasurer's office does handle our banking services, and she was totally on board with doing that. So that's probably one of the big projects that we're looking at in the finance department. Other than that, we didn't have any real significant changes or anything, any increases within our division. Like I said, so do you have any questions? Was there anything that you saw within the finance administration? The finance department, the administration begins on page 9, like I said, and then, like I said, it goes all the way through to page 21, 22. So if there's any line items or anything that in that division that you see, there are no personnel changes within my division. So like I said, we had no significant increases or decreases.
What is the difference you've done as far as the board of directors lining it up with the county? And I think the board needs to discuss that before any of that changes.
They are paying their boards and commissions $100 for the board members and then $150 for the chairman per meeting.
I don't see any reason to raise our rate.
That was just a, like I said, to get us kind of in line with what they just recently passed for their boards and commissions.
Well, yeah, but we're not for a commission. So I'd like to think about that a little bit before you actually change it.
We can do that. If you don't have any questions with the finance or the administration department, I'm going to turn the next division, which is our landfill operations division, over to Stephanie Todd.
Good morning, everyone. For the operational division, it begins on page 25 and goes through page 60. The main changes that we saw in this, of course, as Jan stated, were personnel costs. We added some additional funding in to purchase rock for our road system because when we had significant rainstorms throughout the year last year, since our roads are more inclined now, we're building higher and getting bigger, we need to make sure that we have sufficient rock on site to make sure that we can make those repairs necessary so that when we open, everything is like it needs to be for our customers and we don't have any issues with folks getting in and out. Another area, there was an increase in depreciation due to some new equipment that was purchased. And our radio system, our current two-way radio system is now obsolete, so we're looking at having to replace those. So We took a look at each department and the number of radios that each department had. We added funding in to replace those. So any questions on any of the line items for any of the departments?
I would urge you to continue the excellent work you're doing on the gas maintenance. All right, the more that we can capture, the better off we are. From my perspective, I would like to see the availability of gas reach a level where we can expand the generating capability that's out there, and perhaps either through Santee Cooper or through Roy Electric or something like that, expand that system. I understand based on previous discussions with you that we currently don't capture enough of that to actually do too much of an expansion out there, so I know you're working hard on that, and it's a continuing process, but I urge you to continue.
Yes, sir.
Are the gas pumps that we have now, are they working correctly? Do you have a lot of maintenance or problems with those?
We do have continued maintenance on those to make sure that the pumps are working correctly and we don't have any pinched air lines or discharge lines for the system. It's just that as over time, those wells start to die off. So the only way to maintain and increase is to expand that well field. So when we have expansions, that's what happens. We have an expansion and it gives us quite a large boost, and then we maintain, but then some of the older wells are still on the decline. It's constantly a balancing act.
Do you think we need more wells out?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, as we grow, we need to continually put more wells in to capture emissions, because that certainly helps us when it comes to our Tier 2 testing. Because the Tier 2 test is what kind of dictates when we fall under the NSPS regulations, and those are the new source performance standards. We are there with our tonnage, but we're still below the required emissions level because we still have that system and it's considered voluntary.
Do you have it in your budget to expand?
Yes, ma'am.
You do have
Yes,
that in
ma'am, we
there to
do.
do that? Okay.
So we'll be adding more wells as well, and bringing the ones we got up to date before, that's been there for a long time.
Well, the ones that are no longer good, what we call good producers, we abandon and then drill a replacement well.
Gotcha.
So those wells will have an R beside their name, so we know that there's something that's been replaced. We look at a couple of different conditions to determine the best locations. No questions?
Stephanie?
Thank you.
I'm gonna, next is Richie Stetter. He is our most recent director to join us, and he is currently taking over as the director of fleet maintenance as well as building maintenance and operations. And so he's gonna discuss his area and some of the changes.
Good morning, everybody. The biggest change is we've had, two maintenance positions in a different department, and we moved that money over to put under one department, 519. To be able to manage better in one department. We did add a assistant, clerk assistant. We're gonna get deeper into inventory, or spare parts, as we like to say. We're trying to streamline that department to better support operations of life cycle of machines, being very proactive. And as you know, it's very hard to get mechanics now. You almost have to steal them. So that's been a struggle for us, but we're looking to move forward to make it better that we can buy cheaper parts, better equipment. We're always looking to better pieces. I know Ms. Creech mentioned about more electric equipment, as we have some already. We're always looking to improve on our current equipment, how do we save on fuel, services, and as far as the equipment maintenance on all the departments, that budget has gone up a tick. Not too bad. The MRF went up more than most departments because we're in our 5th year of running that plant. Seems like the quality of belts and parts are not as good anymore, so we're not getting the life out of the equipment over there. It's just part of it, we're working through it, and outside services that we use, they have gone up on their travel fees, the hourly rate, so we've had to absorb that. And but most of all, I'm pleased that we're maintaining and we're keeping ahead of it, staying in the black.
Richard, can you talk a little bit about, I know we just recently went out on bid on the fuel farm, the fuel or whatever, and I didn't know if you can kind of just update them on what kind of prices we're seeing.
So, I know the county, as far as I know, they use state contract for fuel. When you look at state contract to the price that we pay is 20 cents plus a gallon more. Years ago, we only had 3 fuel tanks on the land for 10,000 gallon fuel tanks, 2 of them and 1 5. The struggle was fuel companies only want to deliver full load. So we'd have to run all the way out, and hopefully they're gonna come the next day. Well, after a while, I got old of the stress of not being able to run equipment. It never happened, but close enough that we weren't comfortable. So I thought about it, and we talked internally, let's put a bid out. And I want to pay off of cost. I think that's the best way. I want to see what they pay, and if you need whatever cents to truck it here, that's what you put on there. So that's what we've done, and gas is different than on-road and off-road, but the moral of the story is we're just paying for trucking, and part of the bid was you have to send in your bill from whatever terminal you use and put on your trucking as we agreed to. And like I said, that's 20 plus cents cheaper than state contract. I had people call during the contract and said, you know, the county's doing this, we can supply you this and that, and I'm like, that's fine, you can put it in the bid, but in the back of my mind, if we could save a penny here, a penny there, it adds up because we go through about 350,000 gallons a year in fuel. So it's worked out rather well. We actually are gonna award next week a new fuel company. They were half a cent cheaper than we pay now, which half a cent added up. So going that route, it kind of put handcuffs on the fuel companies, and that we're getting the best price, and they can't get around saying, you know, well, here's the price today, but tomorrow, you know, it changed. There's no way you could do that when they have to send in an invoice for the fuel. So I'm very happy the way that turned out. And also, we went to the remote tanks on the landfill, which helped a ton. That's a little bit more money because you have to go around the landfill, a few more pennies more, but all in all, it's worked out a bunch, and coming the end of the year, hopefully there's a little bit of money left over. We might be able to do another project or something. That's our goal.
I would hope that we can get to a point of where we have enough fuel to exist for at least a week, perhaps more than that, in the event of a national major emergency. Okay? I don't know if we're at that point now, if you have enough fuel to do that, but you should always, in my way, you should always be prepared to exist for at least a week without any outside.
You're all right. And we had a discussion with the remote tanks. It was, when there was a national disaster or something bad going on with the weather, we had to actually take our truck and go buy fuel on the road, bring it back, make sure we never ran out. Now with these remote tanks, we're a little bit more comfortable. We have a little more fuel on hand in case something bad happens. Worst case scenario, we've talked about different departments, maybe one, maybe two, that wasn't a real necessity. We would shut that down. Hasn't happened, but the remote tanks definitely does give us flexibility of always being covered. I don't want to say we have a week storage, but we're close.
But personally, I would think that, it should be a week's school, to try to work up to that. I know you can't do it all in one shot, but I would keep that in the back of your mind as you're doing all of these things that you're doing. We appreciate what you're doing. We appreciate the efficiency that your department has, okay? You have to be prepared to be self-sustaining. In the event of a natural disaster, all right, you're gonna start a lot of heavy work, there's a lot of stuff gonna be happening here. So I would just keep that in your mind, keep that in mind.
Okay.
And do you have generators and whatever? I know one hurricane we had, in my area, we were out of electricity for 9 days. How would you, do you have generator backup for the electrical equipment we have?
So we do have generators, for the fuel farm. We do have generators for admin, the shop, the, MRF. The equipment doesn't need to, because since it has a diesel engine already, it's not, it's half battery, it's not all electric, you don't have to charge it.
Okay.
We are still able to operate, the MRF cannot run the whole plant, but it'll do the admin part, computers and all that. I don't know, investing in a generator to run the MRF in a national disaster would be important. But we do have generators on site to take care of ourselves.
The other thing, since we were discussing different things as far as the landfill, and one was mandating recycling or trying to encourage more recycling. Where is, in maintenance, the equipment in the recycling center? If we put on 1 or 2 more shifts, what would that do to the equipment we have as far as the maintenance? And is there anything there we would need to replace?
Bring back up bad memories. Can we do it? The answer is yes, we can do it. We could do it better next time with, you need more people. We have late model equipment, so we're okay. Now, the plant's in the 5th year of its 10-year life cycle, 15, I believe it is. We're okay with that. We did it last time, we made it work, but we struggled. It pushed people to the brink of
Right.
Danny holding the flashlight in the middle of the night while we're working on trying to fix things. We were committed to make it work no matter what, but we may need to add 1 more piece of equipment. Probably need to add 2 more maintenance personnel, but we could do it. And we'd make it work no matter what you'll decide.
Okay, well, would we be able to do it with our budget on equipment this year if something needed to be replaced? Or do you think you might want to make sure we have that figured into your equipment budget?
So what we've done over time and over there as well, we bought 2 new forklifts, which are about 2 years old right now. What we do is we kept the 2 old forklifts that were kind of end of the life cycle. One, we transferred to maintenance, so it always gives them a spare. And there's another spare we kept in case one goes down, service. So operations is always running, they have their 2, and there's always a backup to a backup. The expenses are not that very high, so that's why we kept them around. They're still in good shape. Yes, the answer to the question, we have a brand-new fry and loader and a 5-year-old fry and loader, which are still very good machines. I'm not worried there in the least. So I'm comfortable. I'm better comfortable now than we did Charleston.
Right, and
We are way better
gave you an
prepared.
idea.
Than we were.
Okay,
So if you were to say tomorrow, we're going ahead, okay, we'll make it work, I feel much more comfortable.
You feel more
Oh,
comfortable
yes.
now that we could do that?
Mhm.
I'm glad to hear
We
that.
learned a lot.
Yeah, from that. Because Conway, and I want to commend you on your recycling. If we had every city and everything in the county that recycled as well as Conway, we'd be in good shape. So, I'm sure we're gonna be working on that and encouraging that in new ways and different ways. And I want to make sure we're able to handle that if and when that comes about.
So when we designed the new plant from 5 years ago, the one we had was like a 10-ton machine because the thought process, the tonnage was very low back then, Esther, 08. Was more than big enough. Well, as we keep increasing the tonnage, and that was what we used in Charleston, that machine was maxed out. And I'm always thinking, you see all the people, the houses being built, I want to be ahead of what's coming. So when we wrote the RFP for it, I wanted to do 20 to 25 tons. So if, say, the plant went down for 2 days, we know we could wind the plant up and catch right back up, no problems. If you said you want to bring Charleston back or whoever, plant can do it. So the plant is more than sufficient if you wanted to increase the tonnage. You have the equipment to do what you need to do.
Okay, I think with the growth that we've had here, and a lot of people coming into this area are used to recycling because it is mandatory where they live. But I'm hoping that will make a difference in how much we get and different things. Not looking about bringing anyone else's in here, but I would really like to boost the recycling in this county. And I just want to make sure we had enough capability to do that under that situation.
That's great.
Thank you.
We had a heck of a test run with Charles,
Well, yeah, we did.
of second shift.
Yeah,
We made money.
yeah.
We spent a lot of time downtown buying ours once
Yeah.
a month. But we handled that well, and now with the increase, different equipment.
Yeah.
No flashlights at 11 o'clock at night.
You don't have to do that again.
No, and I was there many night looking for the ghost. We'd coined that there's a ghost in this building.
Bill, somewhere.
Yeah,
And I like that philosophy that you want to be ahead of it, and you're keeping those figures in mind. That's great, thank you.
You never know what tomorrow's gonna bring.
That's true.
It's not gonna slow down.
No.
So, yeah.
and I have to keep telling Rich, it's good to look ahead,
Yeah.
but give me a break. How far ahead are you?
You're gonna look.
Looking at?
Thank you, Richard.
You mentioned, I'm sorry, before, you mentioned at the beginning that it's difficult to get mechanics, all right? I would continue to make sure that we can give our mechanics the best operating environment that we can give them, right? Because we're gonna have a hard time for the rest of our lives, all right, recruiting those people. I was thinking there are some improvements to the shop and whatever. I would urge you to continue looking at doing those as best you can, give them the best environment to work in that they can give.
And in the private firm, they call it chasing the nickel. Operators will leave on the split second. And they leave for various reasons. Richie had hired a young lady. She was a welder, doing great. And she moved back to out west.
Wisconsin.
So now we're looking again. And, we'll continue to look.
Maybe we need to start sending all of our employees to mechanics school. Didn't work. Jan, I'm sure you would volunteer for that.
Absolutely.
Would,
Trying
We,
help this.
there are there programs at Fort Georgetown Tech for diesel operators and heavy equipment operators. Do they have a program?
They do, and so Blanchard probably has one of the best schools, to go to in Florence. You have to have a 98 average to graduate, you get a toolbox, $4,000 sign-on bonus. And every one of those little kids, after 1 year, I don't wanna do this no more. That's not for me. The program we did with Ori Georgetown Tech, everyone that I had liked to work at the MRF. They were happy, hard to believe. After a year and a half, I want to do. All the training we put into them, and you can't force someone to want to do this trade. And I don't want to say this, like, maintenance feels like a dying breed. It's just, nobody wants to do it. It's a struggle, and you hear crazy numbers trying to get somebody for $50 an hour, and they don't come. Money is not even the issue anymore.
That's the truth.
We do the best we can, and we somehow make it work, and operations helps out a lot when they can. It's a team thing. We all do what we can to pull in one direction and get the job done.
And
You've done a good job, thank you.
Chris and Stephanie have done a great job, and if piece of equipment goes down, and the mechanics have got to go to it. They've got to clean the equipment. Before the mechanics can get started, and, it's not the mechanic's job, to clean the piece of equipment. But it's brand new, it's a tough job to work, the big, the heavy, especially like jacks, all kind of stuff, but job really come along.
Ex-Division Director, Esther's going to discuss with you her division, as well as to review with you unincorporated collection system.
Morning. Our divisional budget starts on page 61. Not gonna hit things line item by line item. As Jan mentioned, most of the increase in the budget is due to personnel costs. We've tried to hold everything, increases to a minimum. I did want to just kind of give you an update on a couple of things that we've been working on this year going into next year. One is in the public education department. We've been developing a new mascot that will work in conjunction with our current mascot, Bruce Refuse. This mascot, we have not officially named yet. We're floating some different names around. I can say that it will be a raccoon. We're gonna park it. It's gonna be a raccoon. We do know that. But the intent is to introduce another character to help, especially with school-age children, introduce and promote recycling and environmental awareness. So the plan and goal is that the costume will be completed before the end of this fiscal year and introduced into the school system in the coming school year. So that's something we're looking forward to bringing to help in the educational realm. In the corporate affairs department.
I'm sorry, before you
Yes,
get
sir, I'm
off
sorry.
education. If we are interested in increasing recycling in Horry County, okay, it's gonna require, I think, an increase in our marketing and our public education in that regard. And I would just ask you to keep that in mind, all right? One of the things I've noticed, and maybe I'm talking left field on this, all right, but our recycling here and the MRF activity is not keeping pace with the increase in population, okay? And I just think we may have to look at the effectiveness of what we're doing, and I would ask you to, and our staff to keep working on that and make sure that we're as efficient as we can be in that and getting the message out of here. I'm not sure that I understand why Murph isn't busier than it is. Okay.
I can weigh in on that just a little bit. One of the unique things that are happening here, and as a new resident to the area, I can tell you where I live, there was only one hauler, and he's only been in business for about 3 years now, that will provide curbside recycling services. Resolve Renewable is the only company that I have contacted that will actually pick it up at the curb at your home. FL, Waste Management, or any of the other haulers that provide the majority of curbside services in all these new communities, they don't provide the service. It's not even available. So unless you're willing to drive your materials to a convenience center to drop off. Now, Esther will tell you, the convenience centers, for those who go to a convenience center, those are bursting at the seams. You go down to McDonald's Shortcut, Socrates, there's a lot of people using them, but not as many as that are moving into homes that just want curbside service and won't. And so all of the growth that's happening isn't keeping pace. Now, if you go to Conway, Reggie's gonna get you.
Yeah.
You go to Myrtle Beach, they're gonna get you. If you're in the unincorporated part of the county, and you're in a neighborhood that's being built up here on Highway 90, and GFL's running through there, Waste, or any of the other private haulers, unless it's Resolve Renewable, they don't have access to recycling. Or they don't want to go and put it in the back of their car and drive it to a convenience center. So that's one of the impacts, that even though the population's growing, unless people have a desire to put it in their vehicle and get it to a convenience center, it's not available to them.
Is there any way to encourage some of these private industries to provide that?
I don't know how you do that.
I think, what was it, about 3 or 4, maybe longer than that, ago, when we tried to do an incentive with all the waste haulers to say, the more material you bring to the MRF, will decrease your tipping fee here at the landfill. And virtually no one took advantage of it, knowing that the MRF does not have a tipping fee. So no one took advantage of the opportunity to do that through their own customers. And you're right, Mr. Camp, it would be lovely if the MRF was busting at the seams, because there's so much more recycling coming in to match the 500+ homes that are being built in Horry County every month. But unfortunately, like Ed said, and being at the home show this past weekend was another reminder that for those who are accustomed to recycling, mandatory recycling specifically, that move into our county, they will always say you don't offer recycling. And we had the conversation a good many times this past weekend, and the conversation is usually, where do you live? And you realize they live in unincorporated Horry County. And you introduce, there is a recycling center, I'm aware. It's not even that they don't know the recycling center is there. The issue is the recycling center is there, and there are materials at your house. And there is no, not in all cases, but unfortunately, the majority of who we speak to, there's a disconnect in the desire to recycle enough to actually take it to the recycling center. There used to be maybe 1 or 2 other haulers in the county that offered services in different sporadic places in the county. But still, I don't know what else we could do to encourage private haulers to actually offer that as a service.
And we've talked,
Mr. Smith,
Yes, sir.
would it be practical and possible for the county to say, if you're going to haul waste in Horry County, you must offer some?
I'm not aware at the moment that our regulations.
No, I don't think that exists now.
Provide
Is it
some
possible to
oversight.
create that
I would
situation?
assume that that is possible, yes.
we've talked about that in the management plan, that we do with everyone. And we've actually thought about unincorporated areas have to have a business license. And if we could really get council in a good mood about it, it'd be just as simple as business license. If you get a business license, all that you got to offer recycling.
Because that would make a big difference here. It would push out or eliminate the fact that we would have to expand on our footprint and the cost it would be and what we would have to go through to do it. And we obviously can handle it, and it would be a start on some kind of mandatory recycling, because in my opinion, the only solution in the future is that people here are gonna have to recycle, because the cost is gonna go crazy in what we would have to do to expand on this landfill. And it would be silly to do that as easy as it would be to have mandatory recycling or insist they do that. Be a lot cheaper for the county, a lot cheaper for the residents, and a lot better environmentally if we could manage to work that out in some way with the county to help us out with that, and the cities.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just anecdotally, I live in Avalon, Carolina Forest, and GFL does pick up our recycling. It's a voluntary program. It started at $40 a year. Now it's $156. I don't know what's going to be this year. They keep increasing it. So you have to buy your container. They have to make an extra trip, so they're short on personnel and they're short on equipment. And it was a travesty between Thanksgiving and the middle of January. They were a week late in picking up everybody because of snow days and holidays just killed their momentum. They couldn't do their regular work, much less come back for recyclables. So it's tough for them, and the only way GFL did it was because they bought out the company that was doing it previously, and they're honoring the contract. We have 735 homes, we're big enough too, but they dropped Southgate, they dropped Walker's Woods, and they've dropped 3 other communities in Carolina Forest. Because it's tough. It's gonna be mandatory, or you're not gonna be able to do it, because people aren't gonna pay $156. I do it because I'd pay that much in gas going every other week to the recycling, to the
And to
convenience
build
center.
on that, I just got my bill, and it's $334 for 6 months.
Yours is 3
To have recycle, not just for recycle, that's garbage and
Oh, so
recycling.
it's just our recycling is $156. I think it's going to $180.
Wow.
Have we ever, I know we have at times put dumpsters in places like at North Myrtle Beach or Myrtle Beach or whatever for people to do. Most of these HOAs have areas, and if they would have something there that was just recycling, I don't know whether it would be worth it for the cities to be able to pick that up for them, and then whether we would be able to pick that up for them, or the county would be able to do, and I'm sure there's a lot of problems that would come with that.
I mean, Ed, when he was at Myrtle Beach,
Yeah.
did you make that work?
I will say this, anytime, and I think that's a lot of what Richie was talking about, they had nightmares when Charleston was in here because they were unmanned facilities,
Right.
and they turned into garbage dumpsters.
Yeah.
I got a grant from the state, we put up 4 dumpsters, 8-yarders, in what I thought were very nice areas where they were doing recycling around them. They were good about their compactor where they put their waste, everything was nice and neat and clean and all that kind of stuff. As soon as the compactor was full, or if they thought they didn't want to walk that far, so unless you have a way to secure it or to have the convenience be provided by that HOA, in other words, somebody from the HOA says this container will be open for these hours because I'm going to have a person volunteer standing there or something.
Right.
I don't know about you, Reggie, but every time I put a can somewhere where it's unmanned, it just turns in, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I mean, we painted them, put up these nice flower beds all around them, made them very attractive, new concrete, the whole 9 yards, and it just turned into a garbage dumpster. And that's the
And you try to
unfortunate.
help people, and you just can't get people with enough character to do what they should be doing.
It was awful.
We put one in Laura parking lot, and she was building. It got so bad, the magistrate called and said, I want you to pick this can up. I can smell it in my office.
Yeah.
And I said, well, the people wanted it. And he said it nice. He said, I can make you move.
It's a nice idea, and I think that's absolutely
Yeah.
a good way we
And
could.
it does work, if you have someone there who is solely in charge of making sure it's not contaminated.
Right.
Ocean Lakes Campground is a perfect
Oh,
example.
yes,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
They do an excellent job,
Excellent
but
job.
they have staff and that's their job, just to make sure that container maintains its cleanliness. Because
Right.
it's
Yeah.
as quick as you put the can down. It's usually, it's a choice, you just decide on, can
We
you wait
could
or
have
not?
our new mascot stand there.
No, sorry, Miss Pat. We could, but we couldn't afford it.
Well, that's sad that
But-
something, you're trying to make it convenient. In some countries, they have things and you have to, each color of glass goes in something. Each piece of different plastic does. And even in Germany, they came up and different places and the people in the community said, we want to do this and pay for it. And they do that, and we make it simple enough to put it all in a commingle. And we can't get people to step up and do something, in my opinion, they should do. That's sad.
And I'm sure the big companies, we got to cut your service because landfills on tipping fee. But they fail to tell them that there's no tipping fee at the MRF.
Right.
For the city, for the haulers, zero.
It's free.
Yeah.
And if you can't get somebody to do something with the cost, I don't know what you do unless you do just make it mandatory and police it. And that would have my vote.
In the corporate affairs area, one way that we haven't given up hope, please don't leave thinking it's hope, it's just hopeless, we can't do anything else. We still, are looking at different ways, different avenues, to keep the recycling message fresh in the faces of our residents, businesses, whoever it might be. This year, we introduced 17 new commercials. I hope you've seen them. They started running pretty hard and heavy last month. And they're focusing on things that are important topics, especially right now. Battery recycling, ensuring that batteries are actually properly disposed of. So that's the Be Battery Smart campaign. There's the Food for Thought campaign, which focuses on food waste recycling. Again, one of the largest commodities that go into a landfill is food waste that could either be diverted way before it hit a garbage can or not created in the first place. We're still promoting the Recycle Right campaign, which just basically talks about all recycles, whether it's glass, cardboard, aluminum, whatever it might be. And those ads are not only running on television, we've got static ads that are running on our social media, on other social media. We just began a digital ad campaign through one of the local media companies. So if you're on your cell phone and an ad pops up from the Solid Waste Authority that says recycle your button batteries, they might hurt a child, don't get mad. Don't say, I'm trying to find the restaurant, don't get mad, but that is still trying to push the word. The next access point, we're trying to get it, we're looking for captive audiences, so it would be the Department of Motor Vehicles. Because when you're in there, you have to wait, and while you're waiting, you're looking at that screen for your number. So while you're looking at the screen for the number, hopefully you will see a recycling message on how to, what you can do to increase your recycling. And so we are still pushing forward. Now, we were able to do all those new commercials this year through a DES grant. So that's one-time money. So I've checked, and next year they don't have that one-time money available. But we will continue to push these advertisements and trying to educate the public on things that they need to be doing as far as recycling.
Because I'm willing for you to have a bigger budget to be able to do these things. And like the street signs, if they're near the school where are high traffic areas and anything like that, as far as I'm concerned, at this point, maybe we need to raise the recycling budget so that we can continue to do these things even when your grant money is gone.
Well, and as I indicated, we've pretty much held any increases to a minimum. So even with regard to the funding we have for advertising and things of that nature, that was also held to a minimum. So, I mean, it would be, you know, the board's discretion if they wanted to change that. I'm not gonna fight it, so if, you know, I'll leave it to y'all's discretion, whether that, number increases.
Can we advertise on Girl Scout and cookie box?
They sold a lot of those at the home show too. They really did.
They were busy.
They were busy.
Okay, I was impressed with what is happening at CCU. I noticed that baseball games now, they actually have, in addition to their recycling bin, they have a compost bin. All right, which this is the first year I've seen that, okay? I have to commend you and your staff on working with them. They're really doing a pretty significant job. I'm not sure in the stands that other than the students understand what the compost bin is for, all right? But, you know, it's there, and
Yes, sir.
it's a good effort, all right? So-
Yeah, Jeremy Monday, heads up their sustainability program, and he's on top of everything. And, I don't know if you recall, but, this past fiscal year, one of the grants, Solid Waste Authority grants that was applied for through CCU was for composting containers to be placed over the campus. So, they're on top of trying to
His
make
role
it work.
increased, he's now head of facilities
Mhm.
and incorporates sustainability.
Yeah, he's definitely one to get it done.
When you do these campaigns, do you see a increase?
Effective, I guess I'm asking? 'Cause just because you're doing marketing don't mean your marketing is effective.
The challenge with any type of marketing is trying to pinpoint whether it works or not. Recycling at the recycling centers, thankfully, has always had a steady incline. Anywhere between 3 to 5% each year, it's had a steady incline. Is that because there are more residents here? Is that because they saw more advertising? Usually the only way to pinpoint if that was your reasoning for why the recycling went up is to basically survey or scan people when they're coming into recycling centers, or send out some type of messaging through the municipalities. Are you a new recycler? Is this something you've continued to do since you've been here? So that's always, and it's not just recycling, it's any campaign, hard to tell. So a few, let me say, two America Recycles Days ago, we did an event and we gave away compost bins. We haven't done it since, only because we blocked traffic on Highway 90, because we were giving away free compost bins. We advertised it in the newspaper, we did it on radio, and then we also had a couple of TV interviews where we talked about it. That day when they came to get the recycling bins, even though we were overwhelmed with hundreds of people to get 100 bins, we took the time to survey, just to say, how did you know about this event? How did you hear about this event? And most, you know, radio wasn't it was probably the lowest of the three. Most heard of it through the television, advertising, and then through newspapers, because newspapers, hard copy newspapers, are becoming very obsolete. So now even when we advertise with newspapers, we have a digital component, so that those who are reading it online also see the same ad. So we do spot checking that way. And whenever we have special events, we try to spot check, hey, how did you know? Just to see what avenues we're hitting with these type things.
The biggest draw is when you got
If it's free, they come. Whether it's a pen or a pencil or
somebody starts.
a cat or.
We could give away some piece of kit to the SPCA. Take the bin they have, take a puppy and get them.
How long have y'all been in the, I guess you've probably been in the school since all the way.
Since, yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
So some of those kids now are probably
Mm-hmm.
older.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's probably the absolutely best way to start is start with the young kids and get them used to doing it and blah, 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 and then just, it stays with them all their life. It's just like when we were taught when we were kids, all
Yeah.
that stuff stays with you all your life. So I think that it's gonna get better because of that.
Oh, yeah, we probably, based on what we hear from DES, trying my best not to say DES, based on what we hear from DES about our school programs and just talking to other counties who want to come in and say, hey, we want to mimic, we want to, how do you run Talking Trash? How do you do your pop art contest or even your high school scholarship program? So, because they are aware, especially those in neighboring counties. We're always thankful for the budget we do receive because we understand and know other counties don't even have that opportunity. If it's not through a DES grant, then they might not have funding at all. So whatever funding we receive, we are very grateful and thankful that it's there, that we can do what we can do as far as promoting recycling.
Mr. Jones, Mr. Fox is not old enough to remember collecting those bottles or the Kodak, taking them
Okay.
back to the store.
Oh, yes, I am. I got 5 cents a bottle.
For cocaine?
You over that old bit, you got
5 cents a glass bottle.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Give me a piece of
Man,
and I can get 5 pieces of bubble gum, then you can't get
And back in the days, I ever told, I'll bring you a bottle back.
Yeah.
So the store was charging.
that's Casey Thomas.
And just briefly, unless there's more questions about the other, I just wanted to briefly review the unincorporated collection system.
Hey,
We're on page 71. Begins on page 70. Page 70 up through 82 covers all of unincorporated collection system. Just as a reminder, the Solid Waste Authority manages the county's unincorporated collection system, the recycling centers on their behalf. This budget is basically a pass-through as far as what's contained in it. Did want to mention, again, even with the unincorporated collection system, we try to hold any increases to a minimum. They have to be necessary increases for us to request it. We did request 2 additional employees this year, an HEO3 driver. We're slated to purchase a new piece of equipment, a Marsh Cat. It's a mobile compactor, so it would go to recycling centers to compact bulk waste containers so that we can hopefully get more use out of the containers without overloading them. We also requested another trades worker position, and that's a maintenance position. The recycling center system has close to 500 containers, which we try to maintain in-house the best we can. We also use third-party contractors to assist with various maintenance of the containers themselves. So those were 2 increases we did request. The increase in this budget is primarily due to increases in system costs. And the system costs would be things such as funding for the next new recycling facility that will be constructed, which, as me and Barry discussed, is somewhere in Horry County. Either in the Forest Brook area, Longs area, but there is a schedule of either expansions or new facilities that we developed a few years ago. So that is incorporated in the fiscal year 26 budget to have a new recycling center located in Horry County. But other than that, unless you have any questions, that's all I have.
I'm assuming that plan for expansion and renovation of the recycling center is updated periodically.
I think we tweak it every year. We look at it just to make sure it's still in line with what we talked about a couple of years ago.
We've tried to identify those areas that are reaching capacity or becoming much more busy because of the growth, or even try to stay ahead of the growth to a small degree, like the Highway 9022 parcel.
Yes.
That's in design now. We will be making an effort to target some additional land purchases with some one-time monies currently, so we can prepare for longer-term needs in that regard, because if we don't get it now and buffer ourselves from our neighbors, we will have some challenges to expand or add facilities in the future.
You said 90 and 22.
Yes, sir.
How about the other one on 90, just gonna replace the one there at North Myrtle Beach? Where we at with that?
Yes, sir, it's in the permitting process. I think we're hoping that that comes out very quickly, so
I
we
hope
go to
it comes
bid very
before
quickly.
22 and 90.
It will be, no doubt. We're just starting to design on the new one there at 22 and 90.
Okay.
Yes.
Question, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Is there room in Fund 6 to augment recycling? As I told you, that, for instance, GFL requires people to pay for an extra run to do recycling. If the county augmented the cost to the collectors to allow them to market a recycling effort where they collect, is there room in Fund 6 to do something like that?
Village that is there today, I think, covers the operational for what we have on the plate. It would take additional resources to be able to enhance that service, no doubt. Not sufficient revenue there to also do that over and above the operational needs.
I'm just thinking outside the box. Do you think there's political will to do something like that? What would it take to get them to consider it?
I know you are as familiar as I am with our council and hesitation in terms of wanting to raise millage outside of those things like public safety. That's been their justification over the last several years.
Instead of the county paying for it, I'd prefer to see them put it in the business license. They're a private industry, they ought to be paying for their own, and if the county put that in the business license, that they did that and had to do that, then the county would have no responsibility monetarily.
At some point, that's gonna have to jack up fees somewhere, correct?
Everybody
Recycling
do
ain't cheap, we all know that.
No, but
You
if they
make money
can,
off of some things and you lose a lot on others.
well, but if they can, they're gonna charge the people there for it anyway, and then when they bring it here, it's gonna be free, so it's not gonna be a problem with private industry.
But encouraging people to recycle is a good thing.
Yes,
It has a double edged sword.
yes.
The center now, manpower is work to limit.
Yeah,
And if we encourage more people, which is the right thing to do,
yes.
then you're gonna have to beef up the centers, expand them. And we sat with the county when we started this expansion. Look, we can tell them which centers, and you can see it in your, board pack. Which centers were busy,
Right.
but we had no idea what was gonna happen on 905. And especially 905 north of number 9, it's just like Highway 9.
Yeah.
And that's a very small, but we work along with the county to
Yeah.
figure out where these centers should be. And the North Myrtle Beach Center is the third or second most
Yeah, used.
used center in the
I
city.
believe that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we're fixing to get 375 more homes within a mile of where they're gonna build a new center at. They've been, I think council had the first vote, the second vote on it this last month. You add that on what we got up there, we're gonna have really a mess, and I feel sorry for those people that work at that center there.
Yeah, that's
The
tough.
abuse they take, I couldn't work there, because if I did, they'd have me going over with an orange jumpsuit.
And it's gonna be a lot cheaper with the recycling than whatever the fees would be if we start having to do $70-80 million in expansion here. So as far as I'm concerned, that's a better solution and a lot cheaper than it will be if we have to do something different.
But thank goodness, the new property is big enough to really expand. It'll be about like McDowell Shortcut International. So it will be way better working conditions, at the least.
You reckon that, if we put a sign on that property coming soon or coming in the future for another site, with these new residents that I was just speaking of, the housing development, I know for one, possibly two, I think that would help any to get them aware that down the road, by the time you move in your house, there's gonna be a place here you can carry recycling stuff to.
Well, then you may not buy a house in there.
The real estate people will be mad at you.
They done bought the property, they're gonna build houses.
They're gonna come down too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're gonna buy again, well,
I've seen subdivisions in different places, I would never, ever think they'd be a subdivision, ever. There's several of them on 905.
yeah.
I mean, there are.
And when they flood, they'll wish they had.
And then they wish they had, that's right. Yeah.
Just briefly, to turn to page 4, just to kind of wrap up on the expenses. You'll see that general administration overall had a 7.6% increase. The operations division, 8.5%. Public education and corporate affairs is a 5.5%. So overall, for just our general operating, you're looking at an 8.3% increase. Below, as you can see, our designated fund transfers. That's for our landfill construction and closure and post-closure. We talked about last year, of course, we had a $4 per ton increase to those accounts based on our engineers' estimates to stay in line, to make sure that we're putting enough funds aside for future costs. So that's where you'll see the increase there, as well as we do have an increase in our tonnage for MSW and C&D. And below that, in the non-departmental, of course, that also impacts the Horry County Waste Disposal Fee, which is at $2.25 per ton of MSW and C&D that we send to Horry County. You can see that went up 3.4%. And then, of course, contingency funds, those are the funds that we kind of, like I said, we set aside for the what-ifs. And as you can see, we were able to put $286,349 into that. That was, of course, are funds that we would have to come back to the board for their approval on. And then, of course, our unrestricted capital, which is those ones that we talk about every year, the e-money. Those allow us to be able to make some of those e-money purchases as well. So overall, our on the expenses side, our budget increased 14.6%, which I think is a very, very fair increase. Like I said, absolutely, I think staff's done a tremendous job, like I said, of holding the lines, cutting where they could, very minimal increases this year. We've been going for a little over an hour. I didn't know if anybody wanted to maybe take like a 10-minute break and come back before we get into revenues and capital.
Y'all.
I'm good. Yeah, let's move on.
Okay, we'll keep moving, absolutely. We're gonna now discuss our revenues. If you'll turn to page 1. Again, you won't see any significant changes, except in our tipping fee area. We had slight increases in tonnages for solid waste and mixed construction. And you'll hear me talk every board meeting, that we're seeing slight increases in our MSW and C&D, so our tonnage did not increase drastically. But as I just mentioned, we did increase what we're having to put aside for closure and post-closure, $4 more a ton that we're needing to put aside. So this year, what we're anticipating is, of course, having to go up on our MSW to compensate that. We were fortunate enough that we only had to go up $3. Instead of going, we're currently at $43 and we're going to $46. So we're only looking at a $3 per ton tipping fee increase for MSW for next year. The largest increase being in our mixed construction. We're currently at $34, 34, and we're going to $46. We talked about that at one of our other meetings about the need to make those comparable. One, again, to offset the cost for closure and post-closure and landfill construction. That's where we need the money. We need the money for future landfill construction, but also to help deter some of the out-of-county and out-of-state waste that we're getting. We know that's an issue, and like I said, so we felt like if we can get that tipping fee, we're still below the average, like I said, but at least it gets us to a point that hopefully it will deter some of that out-of-state waste. I think, Ed, you agree with me? That's kind of what, that was our number one goal with doing that. So that's why you'll see we've got a 17% increase in our tipping fees from FY '25 to FY '26. Slight increase in tonnage, but a large increase, like I said, in our mixed construction tipping fee increase. Any discussion, any questions on that from anybody? We have, I know I've reached out to the City of Conway, City of Myrtle Beach, have asked us about that. No comments, nothing has come back from anybody on that. I think they all understand. They understand where we're coming from. They understand the need for the increase. Like I said, if you'll see, the rest of the revenue sources pretty much stayed the same. Of course, our interest earnings up. Again, I have to give credit to the county for that. Angie Jones does a tremendous job with our investments. Waste tire, we do have that down a little bit. We're gonna get into some of the waste tire issues, which we've already discussed a little bit with you as well. But like I said, that is money that we get from the state. And so, like I said, that did go down some this past year. Other than that, like I said, just some small increases, decreases, overall in our revenue sources. So I'll answer any questions if anybody has any on the revenues.
We know that we're out of C&D land space in 5 years, 4 years, okay? We know that we're gonna have significant expenditures to be able to upcoming. And we have to start budgeting in anticipation of those expenditures. And I don't know if it's, to what extent we can do it, but I think we have to basically start saving and some money to deal with that. And it's not $1 million, it's not $10 million, it's huge, okay? And I think we have to start preparing for that. All right? And have as much of that in to reduce the bond issue as much as possible. And hopefully the municipalities will understand, hopefully county council will understand. But I think we have to start putting millage away, or putting tipping fees away for that expenditure. It's here. 4 years is like tomorrow.
That's right.
All right, and huge, it's big. We're taking care of our minimums here. I think we have to start looking at putting a couple bucks in there for tomorrow.
I agree, we certainly do.
Absolutely. And we're gonna get into a lot more discussion on that when we get to the Capitol. Like I said, that's one of our main topics to discuss when we move over to the Capitol. I'm gonna let Ed kind of talk to you a little bit about the waste tires. That's one of the things that, one of our hot topics that we've brought up to you several times, the issue we've had with the waste tires, what we've kind of done in the past with tires, where we anticipate this next year going with the tires.
So we talked about this a little bit at yesterday's board meeting, and we've been talking about it over the last, 2 years we've been working on this process. And I really appreciate the support of the board for us to stay involved with that, because it's helped us to make sure we kept pushing forward some of the issues, not only for us, but for the rest of the folks in the state who are dealing with this. There are counties out there that are paying in advance of $350 a ton to process, haul, manage, in some way, shape, or form their tires. And the state, according to the Solid Waste Policy and Management Act that was established back in 1991, only allows a county to charge as much as $150 per ton. Every ton over that is coming from somewhere else. So just like we did last year with looking at our expenses for some of our other operations to try to make ourselves whole, as we've done, and you've been very supportive of that as well, we're also now looking at waste tires as the next issue that we need to address. I can tell you that over the last 3 years, as was mentioned a little bit earlier, that the tire grant fund or the waste tire fund in the state has been significantly reduced. There have been some tire pile cleanups that have ate into that budget. There was an accounting error last year that accounted for $2 million out of the fund. So they've had some struggles. And over the course of the last 3 years, it's gone down. Their grant funding reimbursements have gone down by 10%, 20%, and in this most recent year, it's gone down by 30%. So the amount of money that's available to cover costs, and I think, Danny, you mentioned it yesterday, we used to be able, we get a call, there's 50, 100 tires on some vacant lot somewhere, can you help us out? As long as the tires got here, we could call the state and add it to our tire grant fund, and we'd get additional funds to help offset our costs for doing those kinds of cleanups and whatnot, and that money just doesn't exist anymore. So another thing that happened over this past year with everybody struggling with this issue, Greenville County started asking around, and it has come out that DES has said, and their attorneys have verified this, that we do not have to, by law, accept waste tires for free. And that's a relatively new development. It was never, the question was never raised before, but as budgets get tighter and tighter, everybody's, trying to figure out how are we gonna manage this new cost, and how, as the costs go up, what are we gonna do? So they started asking, and it became clear to Greenville County anyway, that in their interpretation of the law, that it says they will accept them with the ST 390 form, and they will not have to be charged and that sort of thing, but it doesn't require them to take the tires that they get brought on. And an ST 390, let me just clarify, there are two forms of tires that we receive here. ST 390, which is a form that a tire retailer will bring in, and that number matches the number of tire sales, so that they get a credit back from the state for them. And matter of fact, those monies go to the county first. Am I saying that right?
Right.
So they go to the county, and then the county reimburses us. So that's one set of tires. Then everything else is just your average person bringing in a half a dozen tires, maybe a small repair shop that's got some in their backyard that they're bringing in. And those tires we charge $150 per ton. Just to give you an idea, last year, out of the 4,000 tons, give or take, that we received, 85% of the tires we took for free. No money whatsoever, and all of that cost we had to bear. Last year, we were short about $200,000 on tires. So we had started talking at the beginning of this process about, should we accept tires for free? And the initial discussions were, and I think they were correct, to say that we're willing to take tires, but we're gonna have to charge you at least $150 a ton that we charge everyone else. That's what we put in the budget. This year, there is legislation, it's S-171. It's the Regrooved and Regroovable Tire Act. And in it will allow for an increase of up to $400 per ton for us to be able to charge for waste tires. That doesn't mean that our costs are changing or anything. That just means that we have the ability now to charge. We would still get for free, unless we change our position, that 85% of tires. It's been consistent year over year. And we'd still be paying it. Now what would happen though, those increased costs would be passed on to the county and to all the residents, and the tire retailers would still get their tires for free. So in the bill, what the tire manufacturers have said, look, tire retailer, we don't want you to take it to the county anymore. We're encouraging you, as the law is written, we're encouraging you to find your own tire retailer, or your own tire recycling market. In South Carolina, Liberty Tire is the tire recycling market. There is one. They all go to North Carolina. 98% There is one company down near Three Rivers Solid Waste Authority that accepts tires from a couple of counties, and that's it. Other than that, well, Liberty Tire. That's where they all go. So they are going to be told, you need to find your own market. Well, once they do, They're gonna have to store them on site, they're gonna have to handle them, process them, haul them, and do all that. And once they realize they gotta pay, it's gonna be more than the $150 a ton that they're gonna be able to bring them here for, is what we're assuming. So what we've said is, look, you can bring your tires here, but we're gonna charge you $150 per ton. If you wanna bring your ST390 tires here, very sorry, we don't accept those for free anymore. You can bring them here, but you're not gonna get, and as a matter of fact, the new ordinance says you won't even get that dollar refund anymore. They've taken that dollar rebate out, so I don't know really what's gonna happen to the ST390 program. If this bill was to pass as it is written now, I think that goes away. There's no other reason to even have it there, because the dollar reimbursement is gone. So, I guess, long story short, right now, I think it's in our best interest that we agree to start charging for tires, all the tires that come in here, so that everybody bears the cost of the disposal. We don't need to have the county bearing all of the costs. We don't need the residents bearing all of the costs. For the retailers that are bringing tires here, we should charge everybody that's fair and equitable across the board. And if you took our total expenditure last year for managing tires, disposal, hauling, all of that, and divided it out, it was about $140 a ton. So what we'd like to do is continue with the $150 per ton throughout the next fiscal year, see where we're at, and maybe, we've talked, it's possible we might be able to even reduce that amount if our costs come back in line. We don't know where that's gonna be, so next year we would know, but right now, we're asking for the board to consider charging all tires that are delivered here at the $150 per ton rate, so that workable.
I think that's a very good idea. Is there anywhere on the business permits with the county or anything that tells the people selling tires they have to submit the tonnage or the amount of tires that they handle?
Yes, well, I don't know if it's on the business license, it's part of the Solid Waste Policy and Management Act.
Okay.
And that ST390 program is something that they've been doing since '91 when that got implemented. So it's been a practice for 33 years.
What they would do is they would send in their ST390 form showing how many tires that they sold for the month. They would send us a copy of that form so that when they brought tires to the landfill, if they said they sold 500 tires, that gave them 500 tires worth of credit here. So as they brought tires into the landfill, they would bring a manifest, as they called it, and they would say, okay, we have 200 tires on this load. So we would reduce their credit by 200. So now they had, 300 credits in there. There was no rhyme or reason. We had no way to count it. We had no way to really verify that they brought in 300 tires. They could have brought in 400 tires, So it was never an accurate method anyway, but this is the way they set it up. This is the way we had to do it. This is what they, like I said, that's why we were taking them at no charge. And like Ed said, it's kind of gotten out of whack. It was fine for years with money we get from the state, from the tipping fee, from the grant money. It pretty much covered itself. But as we've gotten more tires, obviously, and like I said, the money from the state's not keeping up, it's gotten a bigger and bigger gap. And that's why we've said if they can allow us to not have to take them for free, if they say we'll continue to give you the money from the state, and you can still charge them, it makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. Because then, like I said, we're not trying to make money off of these. That's not what, we're just trying to cover our costs. That's why Ed said, after this year, we can take a look at it. We can see, have we lost tires? Have we, are we covering our costs? Then we'll know exactly what that tipping fee needs to be. We can adjust it up or down. We feel comfortable that the $150 a ton will cover our costs. And like I said, all we're trying to do is do just that, break even.
Right, we need to do that, we need to break even. I would like to have a way of tracing that, because about the time the buttercups start coming out, you start seeing people with trailers, and about every 50 feet, they start throwing tires out in the ditch. And I'd like to be able to trace those people doing that.
And that is, we know that's a concern, absolutely, because are you gonna start pushing more to the centers? Are you gonna start pushing more people dumping them out on the side of the road? Absolutely, that's a concern, 100%, but, we feel like we've gotta do what we can to.
Well, we need to cover our costs. I'd just like to have some way to trace some of this stuff, to find out who's doing it, and it's got to be tire sellers, because otherwise people aren't getting big trailers and trucks, and they're getting paid to dispose of that by people selling tires, because you wouldn't get that many anywhere else. And there ought to be a way we could trace that at some point.
So one of the things I can tell you is that the state is part of this bill also. There is a manifesting system that's in there. So at the time that they have their tires picked up by whoever the tire hauler is, there's a number of tires that are gonna be on that truck. When that truck comes to our facility, or any facility for that matter, there'll be another signature wherever they're being stockpiled. And then from that stockpile point to the end processor or disposer, there's another signature. That 3-signature manifesting system will then be audited. So as tires come to us, we're gonna have to, there's gonna be some extra costs on us now, and that's part of the reason why we wanna wait till next year and see. Because we're gonna have to physically count tires now where we haven't counted tires before. We're gonna have to keep a manifest record of those tires so that when the state comes into audit, we're gonna have to keep records of those tires that are brought in here. And when a tire vendor says, I've sold 1,000 tires, but they can only trace back 300 tires making it to final disposal, they're gonna start asking questions back up the chain. Where are those tires going? And there's signature sign-offs on those things. So I think they've kept that in mind, and that's one of the, is it, let me stop that.
No.
But that's one of the means that they're trying to at least limit the impact from the potential of having tires.
And if there's a big enough fine, it'll help them with keeping money up to pay to do that.
That's correct.
So y'all feel real good with the $150?
Yes, sir.
Based on last year's number, yeah.
So every time you go buy a tire or get a new set of tires, there's a sign in there. $5 per tire or $5. Where does that money go, and
Okay.
why is it not covering the cost?
So I can tell you about that. You can go to any tire dealer. Matter of fact, I pay an extra it's $2. The state requires the $2 tire fee. And when we went to them before and asked for an increase to make that $4, oh, no, we can't do that. Yet the tire retailers can charge whatever they want. I bought a set of Firestones over here on 501. I paid $8 extra for environmental fee, changing fee, whatever you want to call it, an extra $8 plus the 2, so I was $10 a tire extra. So the retailers are allowed to charge whatever they want. Lord knows a set of Michelin's is more now than it was back in 1991, but yet the counties are supposed to maintain their operating systems at the same $2. Of which you only get a percentage back. The percentage is, so the retailer, he'll get $1 out of the 2. So of that $1 that's left over that gets distributed back, that's based on population. What's the problem with the population in Horry County? It doesn't account for the 350,000 people a day along the shore in Myrtle Beach and Surfside and everywhere else. So our payback, or our percentage, is only 7% out of the $1 of the $2. So it never was gonna cover it to begin with. So it's just it's a cumulative effect that as you trickle down, it amounted to $200,000 in the hole last year. And that's the thing that everybody in the state is, now we're lucky, we're closer to the end disposal sites, where our hauling costs aren't as much and all those sorts of things, but I can't remember what county it was, but they were over $350 a ton. So it's expensive.
Family might want to put another few dollars on the tire people's business license to go with that.
They should have to pay more.
They should. They're the one making the money on the
That's
tire. They ought
right.
to have
They're
to
ripping you
pay.
off on tires to start off with.
And they're just gonna pass it on to their customer, just like they're
That's
doing
right.
now, but they're making it, more than likely, they're making $7 or $8 more profit on the tire, because they're sticking that money in their pocket.
And the county's paying for their
And we
expense.
think we're paying to have that tire recycled, and we're not.
We're not.
That's ridiculous.
That
is pure ridiculous.
That's what we were arguing all last year when we were going to the legislature. We're just asking to make us whole, and that $2 a tire was gonna help with that. But there was no appetite anywhere in the legislature last session to do any kind of a fee increase of any sort. So we got moved off the agenda, and we just got put back on with the help of the Manufacturers Alliance and their modifications. I mean, they got everything in there they wanted to, and that's fine, as long as we got our money that we needed to. which it's in there so
That
far.
works good for a while, but it's not now.
Right.
I would say what you have shared is tremendous information. I mean, I've never heard
Yes.
this conversation before out of the meeting earlier this week and today. And I would suspect our council have not had that conversation or that knowledge either. So somehow we need to create a method that there's some interaction
Yeah.
so we can educate them on what the real issue is, and then we can hopefully
Yes.
find
Absolutely.
an acceptable solution.
Yeah.
Barry, if you'd like, the DES folks have done a series of addendums describing the tire issue from the start to where we are at the point we were creating our bill last year. And there's been some additional information. I'd be more than happy to share that with you. And then if you wanted extra copies for the council or anything, or if you wanted me to put something together for you, I'd be more than willing to do that.
It may necessitate a workshop
Yeah,
environment where that knowledge can be transferred and discussed.
right. And not only are you paying for it through the recycling centers, but as much as you're paying for cleanup, you're paying for them to go pick up those that they're throwing away. And the other thing you told me that I never thought about, which was amazing, every new car that's sold in here, on the 4 tires on there, they don't have that $2 even on it.
Yeah.
But it has to be disposed of eventually.
That is what's gonna happen, correct?
That's the part of the new language. We had asked for that last year, they told us no, so we pulled it and we added it back in again this year. This time they held on to those phones. Now they took,
Get 1% of that money?
yeah.
I'm kidding.
No, but to your point, of all the cars that are sold, and if you put a $2 fee on it, they estimate that's an extra $1.8 million. It's not like a lifeline, here's a
Little Band-Aid.
little Band-Aid for you. And
Something.
If we don't have any other questions on the expenses side, on the operating side, as you can see, like I said, our FY '26 total operating budget is $29,641,650. Like I said, a 14.6% increase from FY '25. So we will jump over now to our capital budget, which begins on page,
Which one?
our capital budget, which begins on page 8, right here. 87. I'm gonna primarily take a look at FY '26. And like I said, just gonna point out a few of the equipment purchases. As you see, we've got a compactor in there for $1.5 million. Like I said, going down, you see we've got some landfill gas, the blower flare skid design bidding and purchase of $1,050,000. And we got landfill gas system upgrades, $750,000. So we've got definitely have some of those things. And as you can see, the letters next to those give you the funding source. Anything with an A comes from equipment replacement fund. Of course, those things with a B come from our closure.
And charts on 89, ABCC.
Yeah, that's exactly. C is our general construction. I want you to get that confused with landfill construction. It's our roads, who are gonna build a new building. As you can see, we do have the shop expansion in there. We also have an entrance road here. So like I said, we've got some big things in there. That is a fund that we don't put money aside for on a regular basis. If you remember at the board meeting, I transferred some funds into that account because that's the only way to get any money in that, to build that up so that we can do some of these items. Anything with a D is coming from our landfill construction. And as you'll look at that one on page 88, you'll see that we have in there the wetland mitigation of $7.2 million. We have the design permitting of $2 million. That all has to do with, of course, as we're going to get into and discuss our C and D landfill timeframe. We do have in there, of course, starting with the E's, that's what I mentioned earlier. There is no money set aside for those, other than the $450,000 that we have in our operating budget to purchase some of those. So from time to time, when we do a transfer, like I did the other day, we did this last year, we set aside some of that money when I did a transfer for a particular piece of equipment. Last year it was a shredder. As you can see, we have an additional shredder put in there. Not anything we're going to purchase this next year, but we continue to put it in there in case we have a need for it, or like I said, we have the funding available. But like I said, those are kind of our, I hate to say our want items, but that's exactly what it is. And unfortunately, from year to year, it tends to grow, absolutely, because we're not able to purchase everything. But again, I have to commend Richie and Stephanie and Chris. They do a great job of watching the equipment. They've really worked together to look at the equipment, utilize it the best way they can. They've done a great job of watching the hours on the equipment. So like I said, we've been able to push the need for equipment out, which helps our depreciation, absolutely. Like I said, they do a great job of shopping around for the best price. You know, absolutely, when we get the bids, making sure that, like I said, they're getting what they need and not over purchasing. So like I said, overall, they've done a great job. Down below on page 88, you'll see at the recycling facility, which is our MRF and their collection and hauling. They have in there for a new baler, they've got a glass crusher. And again, also on page 89, they have.
What did you say D and D come out of, what fund?
D is for our landfill construction. And that's gonna be like building a new cell type of things. And then E is unfunded. Those are things that we have to have funds available in our operating budget to cover. If you look under, like I said, on page 89, again, there's $1 million in there for the entrance road repair. Like I said, that's for the road over into the MRF. Overall, our capital budget for FY '26 is $36,977,474. All of that is funded through those designated funds, except for the $5,575,000, which comes from the E money. And like I said, once we pass our budget, once it's approved, these items are available for them to go out on bid for. However, just because they're in here doesn't mean that they will be purchased this year. Like I said, we again, take a look at it as staff. Is it really necessary? Is it needed? You'll see, some of these items were in there from last year, they've been pushed out to this year because we didn't feel the need to purchase them. That'll happen again this year. Like I said, again, staff does a tremendous job of really maintaining the equipment, utilizing it where necessary. I'm going to kind of turn things over to Ed to kind of talk to you now a little bit about the C&D landfill capacity facility, where we're going with this. I know we've had several meetings. We've heard from our the gentlemen that have been looking at the mitigation. We've also heard from our engineers on the 3 different areas. I know we had asked Craig Porter to put together some costs, because that's probably our biggest concern, you know, is the cost to do these 3 different areas. Trying to get the most bang for our buck, absolutely, what we need to use it for. So Ed's going to kind of talk to you about some of that. I think he's giving you some information for you to look at, so that we can kind of take a look at it so we know where we're headed.
Did you want to say anything first? Yeah, briefly. I don't have, that's talking again, briefly. So in front of you, there's a packet which explains the landfill discussions that we've been having in 2 different pieces. The first piece here is a timeline that we've asked Wayne Beam, Tom Blue, who are going to be working on part 1, which is the restrictive covenants and mitigation work, And that's on the first page here under proposed time frame for long-term disposal options, you see there. The steps that you see here on page 1 kind of identify the big milestone steps. Certainly there are other things to do within this, but this kind of breaks it down on a step-by-step sort of basis and gives you a timeline for how long it's gonna take, assuming that everything goes according to plan, anywhere from 1.5 years to 2 years to do some of that restrictive covenants and mitigation work. We can talk about any one, I can't really speak to the work involved in any of these steps, but I just wanted to show you what that would look like for us as we go forward on some of these parcels that we've identified here on this site. The green space site up front here by the shop, the oak tree site, which is backed by our composting operation, and then the 100 acres on the 1187 property that we've been talking about. And on page 2, are the steps for the permitting process. Once Wayne Beam and Tom Blue get their work done, then it'll transition into part 2, where Garrett Moore will be the lead now. And they'll get assistance from Wayne and Tom, but it'll be all of the different things that we need to do in order to permit a landfill after we've done all of the work on the mitigation side. Again, these are steps that are the big milestone steps. This is based on your most recent piggyback 3 permitting process. And so there are other things that happen within this, but in terms of big milestones, that's what this lays out for you here, and about how much time it's going to take. Now, one thing you'll notice at the top, it says Class 3 disposal capacity permitting. This is the worst case scenario for a Class 3 landfill, and you see it's about 7.5 years. But if you go down to step 4, the public hearings, the FIN process, my understanding is that that's not required for the Class 2 landfill process, so you might save some time there around that FIN process. But essentially, this is the time frame that you're looking at in order to go through and get the permit for a facility.
I understand what you said, yes, what you told us is okay. But if we're out of land, we're out of space in 4 years.
That's correct. That is correct.
What are we gonna do?
Well, I'll go through this next piece here, and that'll kind of lead into that.
Trying to get a permit.
So, the next section there is a table, a series of tables that was put together by Craig, and it does a couple of things. It talks about the capacity, and it also talks about the number of years that you'll get with the capacity and the cost to get there. So in table 1, if we were going to, on the 3 sites that are out there, the green space, the oak tree, and back on the 100 acres, if you were going to do all of those as a Class 2 landfill, not to say that we're going to, but if we were, in that column over there where it says operation end, you can see how long of capacity we'd have. So the the green site expansion would take us to 2049. The oak tree would take us to 2063, and then if we did the 1187 property, it would take us out to 2081. That's for C and D. But you'll notice at the bottom in the notes, our MSW facility right now is slated to be at capacity in 2051. So that means we would have to haul through a transfer station all of our MSW materials beginning in 2051. All right, so that's the Class 2 landfill. Class 3 landfill, same thing.
I'm sorry, I
Go ahead.
want to make sure that is, you're saying that if we do, if I want to make sure I understand it.
Sure.
If we do area 1 first, then if we do area 2, it goes from 49 to 63?
Correct.
All right, and then that's
From
cumulative?
That's cumulative as you
Okay,
go
all right,
forward.
all right,
Yes,
all right.
correct. And the dollars that are associated with the development costs are all there. The grand total for those 3 sites would be $131 million. Okay? Then if you go to table 2, development of Class 3 capacity only. Again, you go to the operational end of this column, or of this spreadsheet in that column, you'll see that adding the green site as an MSW facility will take our capacity out to 2060. The Oak Tree site to 2070, and the 1187 property out to 2081. Essentially the same time frame. But instead now, we'd be hauling C&D materials as of 2029 in 4 years, because that is our capacity, 4 years left. So if we did it all C and D, we wouldn't have to start transferring until 2051. With doing all MSW, we'd have to start hauling in 2029. And that's one of the things that we don't want to do. We do not want to do transfer station as one of our directives. So if you look at table 3 then, this is a scenario that takes into consideration class 2 and class 3 development and what it would mean for hauling and longevity of our site on site with the existing parcels that are available to us here. So under the class 3 table, you'll see that there are both types of disposal facilities, class 2 and class 3. Under this, and this again, this is just one example. We can mix and match however you'd like, but this one seemed to have the best, I guess, the best capacity for the dollars expended. The green site expansion, again, if we did that as a C&D facility, that gets us to 2049. And then the Oak Tree site gets us out to 2063, that same scenario that we looked at in table 1. And the cost to do that is the 53,849. Okay? And if you go down to class 3, you'll see in the last line there, the 1187 site expansion, that gets us out to 2067. And that's 113 million. But what this does is it compares, it gets our C&D out to 2063 and our MSW out to 2067. Everything kind of merges and ends at about the same time. And we aren't having to haul, and we aren't having to identify another site somewhere in the county or anything until you get out towards 2070. So that's what one scenario could be. Those are the tables of the dollars and the capacities, and we can talk more about that later. The last thing I wanted to discuss was the whole idea of what we've been discussing for several months now. The issue is, as Mr. Kemp has mentioned, class 2 landfill capacity is gone in 2029. That is around the corner. Our directive to staff has been identify on-site disposal options for class 2 and class 3 waste based on capacity discussions for both the waste streams. Our limitations, though, are we do not want to transfer and we would like to not commingle waste, our class 2 waste in our class 3 facility. Those have been kind of the parameters that have been put on staff. So we were asked to go out and look for solutions. So those 3 solutions are, as we were saying, the green space, Oak Street, and the 100 acres. The rest of under the summary will give you an idea, and again, it goes back through and it summarizes what we were talking about on these. Doing everything as a class 2, it's $102 million. We go over to page 2, everything is a class 3 for $228 million. And then the scenario we talked about where there's a combination of both options and where both facilities would end roughly at the same time out of 2063 to 2067. That's $113 million. But again, we wouldn't have to have a different alternative until that time frame. Wouldn't have to consider transfer and another site. So this is a summary. This is very, 30,000 foot view. I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion about the details of what this is going to look like going forward. But we wanted to provide you with the information to start the discussion about timing. Timing is critical. There are 4 years left and we will have no more C&D capacity. The cost is always going to be a consideration. But then the alternatives that are available to us on site are the ones that we were asked to look at, and that's what we provided here because of the work by our consultants who've done a great job by putting these numbers together in short order so that you have something to discuss.
And we did ask you to do that, and thank you very much. The other option I want to look at is us, as you said, you could get the figures together of us recycling, more mandating it and doing those different things and the different costs, because we can already start doing that next week if we just put on another group of people. But I still want to see the cost on the recycling and how that would do and the percentages and how that would affect these years. in us not having to do this as quickly and maybe not having to do it in the future, if we can handle that through the county and the state and change some of those, that we're looking at, writing resolutions to be presented to the state, and we can't count on that, so we have to go forward with what we're doing. But there still will be a difference in the time frame than if we had to do it in the cost, and I'd still like to have that to compare to that.
Sure.
Thank you.
What percentage, what percentage of C and D could be recycled?
Right now, today, we're bringing in somewhere between 550 and 600 tons a day. We divert about 100 tons a day, give or take, to our recycling facility. And we're putting about that same amount of material through the shredding operation and reducing its volume by about 70%. So out of that, I guess we're knocking all over 30% of the material that's coming in as C and D, we're bypassing. But then again, we're also looking for other materials to include in that recycling stream. Is there a way to divert shingles? Right now there isn't, but that's a big part of our waste stream. Is there a way that we could divert sheetrock? Are there markets for sheetrock out there? Because that's another material we might be able to. I know in my past life, where I used to work, sheetrock was a hot commodity because we had a lot of dairy farmers, and they loved to grind it and spread it because of the lime content in the sheetrock, and we had no problem getting rid of that. I don't know what the farming situation is down here. That's another avenue I'd like to explore, is if we could divert materials that way. So we're always looking to divert materials as best we can.
But when you say we're already recycling a good portion of it anyway, because we take the loads that do come in, that have the majority of the wood and things like that we can recycle and already are separating them. I feel like I said,
Yeah.
the loads that we know cannot be recycled either go to the shredder or go up on the hill.
Yep.
So I think we're already doing a very good job of recycling the C and D loads.
My concern is, and I agree 100% with trying to increase recycling. But where we're at, I'm not sure that gets us time. If we started on June the 1st, and July the 1st with mandatory recycling, I'm not sure that in essence, that we're gonna actually get that much benefit out of it if we're already recycling a good chunk of C and D, and C and D is our immediate problem. Okay? I mean, I think it has to be done, and I would encourage us to work it to get that done. But I'm not sure we're gonna get as much benefit out of that as, doesn't mean, to me, it doesn't mean that we're gonna not have to do this expansion.
That's
I
right.
think we have to do this, period.
We do.
And we gotta do all those other things, so that instead of 2063, maybe we'll get it to 2070 or something like that with good recycling. But the immediate savings in time and airspace, I'm not sure is there.
Well, the more that we can divert, to Ms. Pam's point, the more that we can divert, the better and longer these facilities will last. And as technology improves and as markets change, we're gonna try to, everything that we can do to divert, the work that Esther does, the work that the operations folks do to get materials to that facility, municipalities, the things that Reggie does in his municipality to divert materials, I think all of that impacts this asset. And that's really what the authority is to Horry County, I believe, is an asset. And it's something that needs to be managed, because this is, for all intents and purposes, everybody in the county, every resident, every institution, every business relies on this facility for its condition of health and safety. Without this facility, the next closest place to haul materials to, and we've gone through this scenario, and we've talked about it briefly, a lot of our materials might end up going to Columbia. You know, we bring in 2,000 plus tons a day today. I can't imagine hauling everything to Columbia. The cost of doing that is astronomical.
How would you get it?
would have to have a mega transfer station, and we'd be hauling,
That was the word we were not gonna use.
that's exactly, well, you asked me, so you didn't say it.
Well, you was beating all around.
I didn't wanna get my hand slapped. Dan's sitting right here.
What are is asphalt and sheet rock two of the biggest things that we cannot recycle that come in with C&D?
I think of the things that we can't recycle that are going into C&D, probably, I would say so.
Okay,
And the more that we can get out of that material coming in, the better we're gonna be. So
right.
again, if there was a way to.
What if we chose not to take, sheet rock and shingle?
Oh, well, yeah.
The woods would be full of it.
Now, you know people wouldn't do such.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, I just say that the more that we can do in these kinds of recycling, waste diversion, processing with the shredder, all of those things mean that this asset lasts longer, which means we can provide a cost-effective alternative for everybody in the county. And that's the goal of the staff.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, question for information. 500 tons is how many trucks a day?
It depends on C&D material. What we've seen is a 20% increase in truck traffic. Now, that doesn't translate into the percentage of same for tons, but do you know how many double axle dump trailers there are in this county? I can't count them. I mean, thousands of them come into this facility.
And a bunch of that singles.
Yeah, and a bunch of it shingles, that's exactly right.
Because we've, just from memory, the capacity we've gone up, I think we've really charted the growth trajectory that we're on.
Yes.
Because that helps sell this concept. We have to do this just on that trajectory of how much the capacity has increased year over year.
Oh, yes.
Because it wasn't so long ago, it was just 200. It was just 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
The gentleman from Conway that you've been listening to us, and I'm sure you handle this for Conway every day. Is there anything that you would want us to do, anything we're helping you with, not helping you with, what you're seeing on this conversation that you might not want us to do or might want us to do?
I think you're on the right path, is concentrating on recycling. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that I fight is cardboard and large volume of recycling, trying to get it to the MRF. Takes a lot of manpower.
Yeah.
It takes the equipment and it takes time too, because you gotta put it in the right places, in the right locations. So you're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you.
First page, okay, the goal was to not commingle class 2 and class 3. What are we gonna do for the 3 years?
Okay, so again, that's why I kind of skirted around that and said it was our desire not to. There will come a time, because we only have 4 years left, that there will be a short period of time that we'll have to commingle waste. There's just, the time is not going to allow us not to do that. However, as soon as we can make a decision that this is the path we want to go on, the sooner we can start on this process, and the sooner that process gets done, to shorten up that time that we do have to commingle. So time is of the essence. If we make decisions now that we're gonna go down a certain path, and we can avoid that, the quicker we make those decisions, the better, the shorter that window will be.
Cheapest thing on here that gets us the longest life is $113 million. It's on the table 3, I guess it is. How are we gonna pay for that?
That's definitely going to be through bonding, and we know that. Like I said, absolutely. You know, we're, between the cost for mitigation, the cost for construction, absolutely, we're gonna be looking at bonding. And like I said, I've already reached out to Barry, of course, for their assistance on that process. It's something that we've never been faced with before, nothing we've ever done before, but that's definitely the way we're looking. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing by any means. But like I said, that'll definitely be what we'll be faced with. But as you know, and said, the sooner we can get some of this started, and the sooner we can, you know, put more aside as we are, like I said, that'll definitely help, absolutely. You know, hopefully there'll be less that we'll have to bond, and that's always our goal, absolutely.
Are you working on now trying to identify a potential financing methodology and what the potential annual cost is gonna be? What I'm getting at is, a little bit earlier, I said, I think we ought to start looking at our tipping fees to try to reduce the amount of bonding. My question in the back of my mind is that worth it? All right, should we do that, or should we just simply say, okay, we're gonna float it? And in my opinion, that's today's numbers, best guess. By the time we get to it, we're gonna be saying, oh my goodness gracious, you know?
Right.
So,
And what the
we
bond
have-
will last beyond 27.
We have not, until I get board's direction on which path you want to take, you know, which direction we're going as far as, are we doing these cells as C and D, are we doing these cells as MSW, are we doing some as C and D, some as MSW, that we know which path that we're looking at, then definitely I will start working with Barry, and his staff to look at what it's going to take, absolutely. But I think we've got to have direction from the board first on how they want us to move forward with this.
I would suggest that there's probably a combination approach that you would desire to take. I think your development cycle here for this new capacity is a long-term cycle.
Right.
And it's used over a long period of time. And usually the bond would be paid by the people using that capacity.
That's right.
But you wouldn't want to borrow the money now and not spend it for 5 years.
Right.
You would want to perhaps have sufficient cash resources to get you through the permitting cycle to
That's
really
right.
go to bid, and at that point perhaps is when you would incur the debt. And you could actually stage it from the standpoint that you do a bond anticipation note, like a credit line as you're drawing it down, and then when you have the real cash utilized, actually go into the market and shorten that window of time that it's actually outstanding.
Absolutely, he's exactly right. Yeah, I feel comfortable that we'll have the money set aside to exactly get us to that point before we start actual construction.
If put another piece of equipment out there, give us any more lifetime on the CMD?
The problem with, and Mr. Kemp and I have had this discussion, right now, it's hard to determine whether or not there is sufficient material to have, let's say, another shredder out there. What's left after we shred what we can shred today is a very small amount. Most of what's left over is dimensional lumber, drywall, and shingles that you don't want to put through that machine. I think Richie will tell you the shredder, the process to keep maintenance going is a fairly expensive one. And the downtime and all those other sorts of things. Because we run a select load material through there, the bulky mattresses, furniture, those kinds of things, he has worked with the mechanics and the fabricators. They've gotten to a point now where we're running about 100 hours before we have to replace teeth, something like that. 250. So he's gotten the cycle down pretty well, so we're running really tight and we know exactly how to do this. The next part of this is going to be DES in April or May, depending, because they had the funding cut. They're supposed to come in and do a waste characterization on our CMD material. Once the waste characterization is done, if we identify that there is sufficient material to justify the cost of another machine, then absolutely, we could support that. I just wouldn't want to go out there on a limb, add another piece of equipment if there's not enough to keep it busy, so to speak.
So sheetrock and shingles is a big problem.
It's a significant part of our waste stream that we can't do anything with. The lumber, we try to pull out as much as possible. And we have good secure markets for that. The mulch, we continue to sell mulch. Those sorts of things, but there's just certain things in that waste stream, especially when it comes in commingled, you can't without, short of putting pickers on the hill and actually hand separating stuff, which I'd never suggest getting into that. It's really hard sometimes to get that stuff out, but the ladies at the scale house do a wonderful job diverting, you know, they ask what's in the load, and if it's something that can go to SW6, we send it over there, and if not, they're sending it to the shredder, and if it's something that you just can't because of its condition, then that's what goes to the hill.
I'm assuming you can't grind the shingles and the sheet rock and mix it with other dirt to use as a daily cover?
No.
Okay. I know they allow certain things. I didn't know if it would be, if they allowed it, and if it was, would it be feasible to do that?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, if they allowed people to grind up sheet rock and put it where milk cows would eat it, I don't know what.
Well, it was in the fields they grew grass on it, I guess. I don't know, I wasn't the farmer, I was just providing the material.
But the cow ate the grass.
Yeah.
Okay.
The sheetrock's probably not bad, I mean, I wouldn't think.
It's not gypsum anymore.
Huh?
It's not gypsum anymore.
Is that right?
It's not a natural product anymore. It's now
Whatever.
impregnated with all kinds of materials.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's 30+ years ago, I hate to.
Okay, we don't want to do that.
Recommendation.
I think the number 3 issue with beach wicked right now. The chief is lifting and we need to know that because then we'll know what time it's gonna take for engineering, what time it's gonna take for environmental data, that we can continue to the other two sides. And I think that's staff recommendation, we got these figures, Jen, number guru, she got that, she said, well, this will be the best way because it all basically runs out about the same time. We can't outguess various building permits,
If you would stop that, Barry, we wouldn't have this problem.
well, he's gonna say if you recycle more.
We could if we'd let us mandate recycling.
That 100 acres, the only thing bothers me, what will happen if we have a major disaster?
It's a concern.
We've got,
I guess you got the property at Green Sea.
and we got the property on 57.
So that, those two would
We
have.
got that, at least a little piece of property in the Surfside.
Yeah.
It won't, it might stand some separating and stuff like that, but, of course, we've used the big 2 fields beside the MRF. But then again, the big one is gonna take all the sites that we got. I'd hate to see us use that one. The need may be there.
We have money, this year's budget,
We do, yes, sir. 7 million that I had mentioned for the mitigation, and then for the permitting, the other 2 million, yes, sir.
He's done an excellent job
I
himself.
don't think we got an option. I don't think there is no option.
Get down off Straw Bluff Road.
so do you want a motion for that?
Yeah, we definitely need to, this is the plan.
Okay, which one of these are you recommending now? Number 3?
The combination of C and D.
That's 113 million?
Basically, I guess. As the keeper of the road.
The only
They
area,
could recommend that and then this next board meeting.
Actually, since this is a board workshop with the full board present, they can
Yeah,
actually
so-
make the motion and keep it moving.
we understand, on the plan that we're talking about, the only area that we developed for class 3 would be the 1187. Everything else is gonna be class 2. Two initial phases will be class 2, and then 1187 will get us class 3. I would entertain a motion to accept the
Make a motion to accept staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
question. By saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered.
Well, if nobody has any other questions, I appreciate everyone being here. I appreciate the discussion. So I really want to thank the staff, Trina down there at the very end. She did a lot of hard work working on this year's budget for us as well. All the staff, like I said, did such a great job reporting the budget. I appreciate the board working with us. Like I said, we'll put some final numbers like this together, get it sent over to the county. They have a budget workshop on April 10th. And so it'll go to them, and then it'll come back to you for final approval. And then we'll have a budget for beginning July 1st. If you have any questions when you leave, if you have anything, if you go through here and see a line item, but you still have a question or you want to come in and sit down and talk with us, please, by all means. Like I said, we still have time to make any changes if necessary.
I'd like to say one thing. Thank all of you for your hard work that you've done, because you've done an excellent job, I think. And, I really appreciate the energy and time that you put into it. You got a good staff out here. We need to make sure we take care of them.
Thank you, we appreciate it. We appreciate all that the board does for us, absolutely.
I think that probably goes for every single one of us. All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Recognize what you do, and we appreciate what you do.
Thank you. And lunch is here.
Okay, anything else? Now, we entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.